Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan. As this terrible disease locks down the entire world, many people for the first time in their lives are taking inventory of what is important in life and what is not. Like celebrities, without all of their production and studios and laugh tracks, they kind of just seem like terrible YouTubers, not so different from the rest of us. Then there's stuff like toilet paper. People in the future are going to look back at this period of time and think that we were disgusting animals, because we're cutting down beautiful trees and wiping our doo-doo on them. It's gonna totally overshadow all the wonderful things that we've done in our history, like splitting the atom, curing AIDS, and Tom Hanks. If you actually want people in the future to appreciate Tom Hanks and all the wonderful things he's done, try using a hose instead. It makes you feel more cultured and European, and you can even brag to your friends about it. But then there's alcohol. While gyms, public schools, libraries, offices are all shut down, liquor stores remain open, along with other essential businesses like grocery stores, hospitals, and so on. We finally started appreciating the liquor store man, most likely a small elderly Asian man similar to the Keymaker in Matrix Reloaded. He opens us doors, metaphorically, so that we might escape the cruel realities that life throws into our faces. Now, it'd be very easy for me to stand on top of my chair right now and just yell and scream about the dangers of alcohol, but I'm not wearing pants. I could talk about addiction, health problems, and the eventual downward spiral it will lead to. But what's the point? I mean, everyone already knows that alcohol is bad for your health, and you can only really help a person who wants to be helped in the first place, right? But what is interesting, though, is how our society decides to portray alcoholics in our stories. They are the heroes more often than not. Their blunders always seem to help the situation, and their alcoholic ramblings always seem layered with poetic meaning and prophetic wisdom. Yes, of course, I'm talking about the heroic drunk, a tradition in storytelling that goes all the way back to the ancient times of Odysseus and Hercules, a time in which heroes drank more wine than they did water, as a safety precaution to guard themselves from death by dysentery. In honor of these blacked out, shark-eyed, stumbling heroes today, I want to look at the 7 most heroic drunks in film. When we remember someone like Russell Casse, we don't remember the abusive father that was completely absent and also very irresponsible towards his 3 children. We don't think about the Russell Casse who can't function in real life and hold a job for more than a couple of months. We don't think about the Russell Casse who happens to be ill-equipped to handle pretty much every task aside from flying a plane. But when humanity needed him the most, when the most gangster president in history, Thomas Whitmore, needed him the most, Russell Casse was in the right place and right time to make the ultimate sacrifice. You see, there's nothing remarkable about a perfect person who's been perfect their entire lives. I would argue we should not trust individuals like that because they're most likely hiding something terrible. But when we see a story like Russell Casse's, a story about a drunk, deadbeat, potentially abusive father who might have been probed by aliens but most likely he's just mentally ill, turning his life around so that he could suicide bomb an alien mothership, it's a story that we can all relate to and hopefully one day follow in his footsteps. When you take a look at a woman like Marion Ravenwood, you might think attractive, nice smile, nice eyes, petite and fragile. So when you see her in a drinking competition with some hulking Nepalese goon, you might think she doesn't stand a chance. But everyone knows you should never judge an alcoholic by the size of their body. You should judge them by the size of their liver. Not only can Marion Ravenwood drink a much larger and hairier man under the table, she can drink a large Nepalese man under the table at extremely high altitudes. You see, the further away you get from the flat Earth, the less oxygen and air pressure there is. If you're drinking in the Himalayas and you're not acclimated to the altitude, one drink can feel 3 to 4 times more potent. Now, technically, Marion does live in Nepal, and the bar we see her in, the Raven, used to belong to her father, so she does have some training. But still, she's a very impressive and functional drunk. Not only is she still conscious after her competition, when a bunch of Nazi treasure hunters burst into her bar, she still manages to stay cool and shows that she can handle herself in a fight. Some people drink to drown the anger monkeys inside their head. Some people drink to chase away all the demons following them. Some people drink because they're just bored of life. Joan Hancock is not the superhero Los Angeles wanted, but the superhero they deserve. The City of Angels is the quintessential city for the American Hollywood dream. It's this crazy, beautiful, sun-drenched metropolis to which millions of people flood to chasing fame and riches. Most don't make it, some will get sex changes, and the few that do end up making it to the top will quickly realize how lonely it is when you're up there all by yourself. Hancock is sort of at that last stage of celebrity. He's not exactly famous like a celebrity is, but he's basically bulletproof, can fly, and has super strength. And yes, even those abilities can get boring after a while. So in his boredom, Hancock chooses to embrace the bottle. Not only does that make things more difficult and therefore more interesting for Hancock, it also lets him forget for a moment that having superpowers doesn't make him feel happy at all, because the one superpower he doesn't have is being happy with himself. Will? Intelligence, like anything in life, is best in moderation. I mean, would you rather be the smart kid who gets picked on by everyone because you see the world differently and probably a lot more clearer than everyone else? Or would you rather be the kid who's eating crayons because you believe you can taste the colors? Ignorance is bliss. Had Joshua Manske been born with a few dozen less IQ points, he probably would have had a very successful career as a mathematician and professional crayon eater. Unfortunately, his brain was so hypersensitive and powerful that it was oftentimes overwhelming for Manske to be in a stimulating environment. It's like trying to launch a drag racer in the rain. Your wheels just aren't going to have enough traction to the pavement. So instead of being involved in academia or working on some research project, Joshua Manske survives by hustling people out of their money in backroom card games. Now, once upon a time when Manske was still a young man, he had been an extremely formidable chess player. At one time, he had beaten a chess master by the name of Konigsberg. Konigsberg was now on his way to Poland to partake in an international chess match against the Soviet Union. Both the United States and the Soviet Union were now embroiled in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the CIA wanted to use the tournament as a cover-up to contact the mole within the Soviet Union. This individual could provide intel on what the Soviets were shipping in their cargo ships to Cuba, and that information could potentially prevent World War III from breaking out. Unfortunately for the CIA, Konigsberg had been killed, and now the only replacement that they could find was Joshua Manske. Now, a lot of people might look at him and see a man with a drinking problem. But soon the CIA realized that Manske actually has a sober problem. You see, when he's sober, Manske is just not functional. His hypersensitivity to his surroundings makes him lock up. It's only when Manske is comfortably numb that he can actually function. Not only does he easily defeat the Soviet chess master completely hammered, he also takes part in a very complicated transfer of highly classified information, which he personally then conveys to JFK, which ultimately prevents World War III from kicking off. It goes to show us that there's always exceptions to the rule. I mean, alcoholism is almost always bad, but there are specific cases where it can be a very welcome medicine. Kung Fu has faced some setbacks in recent years, especially when it faces off against more combat-oriented martial arts. But there's something undeniably cool about developing complete control over one's body and looking like a complete badass while you're doing it. Besides, it's pretty easy to get a gun or a taser or a knife or a coronavirus or a spear nowadays, so any individual who goes to the martial arts solely to fight people is probably not very intelligent. It's quite a popular method in wushu performances and can be really fun to watch, but as a practical fighting technique, the best parts of it are all about deception and feints. In the Drunken Master, Freddie Wong basically is the town drunk. He's also an accomplished drunken boxer. The more drunk he gets, the better a fighter he is. His opponents seem to never really take him seriously, and that is the beauty of a drunken fist master. It's the ultimate underdog style designed to put people at ease. A man who is looking at a drunk who has trouble standing up straight is probably not expecting a punch to the face. But what he doesn't realize is that it's incredibly hard to stand up straight when you're drunk, but it's pretty easy to move aggressively and dangerously in one direction or another. And although all of Freddie Wong's moves seem random, they aren't. He spent several years training under the drunken master Beggar So. He spent countless hours learning how to fight while being completely obliterated. Like anything in life, one's drunken brawling skills also gets better with practice. It also doesn't hurt that random people will throw you liquor bottles in the middle of a fight, which can be used as a melee weapon or also health potion. While martial arts were a bit less developed in the West in the 18th century, a pirate by the name of Jack Sparrow was carefully practicing his own brand of drunken fist fighting without even realizing it. Unlike Freddie, Captain Jack didn't have some ancient drunken fist master teaching him though. Instead, like a lot of sailors back then, Captain Jack just drank rum as a replacement for water because dysentery. He was also a pirate in the sugarcane plantation-rich Caribbean, so more rum. The problem with using rum as a thirst quencher is that you can never truly quench your thirst with such a drink. And so Captain Jack was always well hydrated and never sober. He also fought quite a lot and developed quite the technique for drunken sword fighting. It looks very lackadaisical and random, but I assure you the captain is a professional. There's something truly brilliant about going into battle completely inebriated. It's one of the most foolish things you can do, but also at the same time the smartest and bravest thing you can do as well. Foolish because you might do something completely brave and get yourself killed, but smart because at least you won't feel much and there's never a guarantee that if you are sober you will survive. And if you look at history's best warriors, they were all on something crazy, whether it was a lot of alcohol, amphetamines, brain parasites, religion. Thoros of Myr, the Red Priest, was most likely on a bit of everything. The Lord of the Light gave Thoros the power to revive people from the dead. Actually, just one person multiple times, Lord Beric. Thoros wasn't an exceptionally good priest, but his excessive drinking gave him courage to be a fearless warrior. He also had a flaming blade, which is pretty cool, and also disinfects any wounds he creates, which is even more cool and thoughtful. Thoros of Myr would be forever immortalized during the Siege of Pike during the Greyjoy Rebellion. He was basically the first one through the breach. He must have been a fearful sight, his eyes completely unfocused, beard and cloak drenched in ale, and his flaming sword held high above his head. Now, the point of this video is not to shame alcoholics and tell them to stop drinking. The whole idea is that if you are an alcoholic, why not become the best alcoholic that you can be? You know, do something cool like, charge a machine gun nest with a flaming sword. Well, legally speaking, I actually can't advise you guys to do that. So let's just end the video on that. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button, by the way, if you want to check out the rest of our awesome content. My name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie, and you are the protagonist.